Hello everyone, I am the Storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The captives. I have been a prisoner in this camp for more than 1 year. Many of us have died, mostly at the hands of our captors, but some from disease and trauma. Somehow I have survived, but it hasn't been easy. They beat us mercilessly today with leather straps. At least 4 men surrounded us and whipped us. They yelled at us, "Move, you stinking beasts!" They made us run into a wooden structure, then locked us in. I was afraid they would light the structure on fire with us locked inside. But whipping is not the worst. One of the men used a red-hot iron on one of us. I will never forget the screams of agony from that poor chap. It left him with horrible burns. He died soon after. I would estimate there are about 100 of us in this part of the camp. There is a big turnover, with new inmates showing up daily. About every 5 days, about 10 inmates disappear, and 10 new ones are brought in. We are given very simple food to eat, usually either a slurry of corn or a bucket of fetid mush. The captors often walk back and forth, laughing at us as we try to eat. Most of the time, we have to squeeze our heads through the bars on our cells in order to get to the food. The beatings and torture are bad, but there is something worse. Several female inmates came into the camp pregnant. When they gave birth, the men in charge immediately took the little one away, not even giving the mother a chance to see or bond with it. I can't think of anything more cruel. A few days ago, they came into our barracks and grabbed 4 unfortunate inmates. They used handheld electrified clubs and drove these 4 chaps out and into a separate building. We heard them screaming. But soon after that, there were 4 loud thuds, and then there was silence. One of our informants claims he witnessed the goings-on in there. He said he saw our compatriots hanging upside down by their legs, with their throats slit from one ear to the other. When word of this spread through the camp, there was a palpable wave of horror and panic. Detailing all the brutality and torture we have experienced seems like wasted energy. No one listens to us. There doesn't seem to be any end to this existence or hope for the future. Many of the inmates show signs of depression and severe anxiety. One inmate had been very quiet, but suddenly threw himself against the electrified fence, dying right there. The captors left him standing in his death, leaning against the fence with the full current flowing through his body, his legs twitching and spasming. We suspected that leaving him there was a message to us, not to disobey or try to escape, or that same type of destiny awaited us. Yesterday morning, a very important man visited the camp. We knew he was important because of the way he was dressed. Most of the workers in the camp wear casual clothes or military-style tactical outfits. This fellow was decked out in a 3-piece suit and had a leather overcoat slung loosely about his shoulders. He carried some type of cane or stick. A rumor spread quietly amongst the gathered that this man might be the one they call the Angel of Death. He had us line up for inspection. Any inmates not accurately in line met with an electrified club, ensuring obedience. While we were at attention, he strolled up and down the row, pointing his cane at a few of the inmates he favored. His assistant wrote down the chosen inmate's number, and once he left, those selected were taken away and led into the back of a large truck, never to be seen again. I sometimes stand quietly outside the barracks, and I can see life way off in the distance. There is a park not far from here. One can see people walking their dogs, picnicking or bicycling happily. I can even hear the laughter of children as they run through the park with their parents chasing after them. How beautiful, I think, would it be to stroll in a park, saunter down to a babbling brook up in the hills, or eat peacefully without the fear of violence. I know it's just a matter of a brief time until my life comes to an end. I've lived this nightmare existence longer than I expected. When I first arrived, other inmates told me I probably wouldn't last a month. But I have seen many come and go, to a fate unknown. It would be all too easy to give up all hope. But when all seems lost, one still has the right to dream. That is something they can never take away from us. My dream is to live long enough to see an end to this incarceration and torture, and perhaps even get home to my family, if they still exist. There doesn't seem to be any hope of escape. The camp is too cleverly constructed for that. In fact, in some inmates, there seems to be almost a sense of resignation and acceptance of their tragic existence. I believe they call that Stockholm Syndrome. Generally, our captors do not engage us in conversation or ask us anything. They usually just walk by as if we don't exist. When we move, they don't seem to understand what we are saying. I suspect they would at least try to communicate with us if we were human beings rather than cows. But today, uncharacteristically, one of my captors stopped at my cage to chat with me. He was one of the youngest of the men and sounded sensitive and caring, as strange as that may seem. But what he said really confused me. He mentioned that he doesn't eat meat and that he doesn't agree with the use of animals for food. I really didn't understand what he meant by that. After all, what is meat? Not the brightest bulb. The light panned over the coast, gutting the night like a blade through a fish's belly. Emerson. Lighthouses. From experience, he knew the storm would be raging well into the next day. But he'd be safe here. This lighthouse had weathered many storms before this one, and it would weather many more after, too. It had stood here since before he was born, and it would stand long after he was dead, which wouldn't be long now, he reasoned. He raised his metal cup to the windows, which looked out onto the frothing midnight ocean. He offered the night his cheers, then sipped his neat rum. Lightning lit up the abyss, burning his retinas white for one faltering heartbeat. The wind whipped and whooped around the edges of the lighthouse. The rumble of thunder came 3 seconds later, reverberating through his bones. Emerson blinked. The ocean was a cruel mistress sometimes. He knew that more than anybody. He'd spent much of his life aboard fishing vessels, at sea for months. He felt more at home on the open sea than on dry land. That was why he'd taken on the task of lighthouse keeper after retirement. But it seemed that people had lost their respect for the water. Kids rode inflatable beds out on riptides, and needed rescuing. Rich yuppies took their boats out in unsafe conditions and needed rescuing. Partying youngsters went for midnight swims whilst inebriated. They drew the attention of the sea beasts, which they then hunted for revenge. And thus, the creatures needed rescuing due to their dwindling numbers. Companies dumped their foul excretions into the blue, so the sea needed rescuing too. Emerson growled and scowled out. The thunder and lightning lashed from the heavens once again. The rain pelted sideways at the window, rattling against the glass. The gale screamed like a dying creature, wounded by a harpoon. Another sound chimed throughout the lighthouse, but this had nothing to do with thunder. He grunted. Somebody had rung the lighthouse's doorbell. Who on earth could that be? The lighthouse clung to a rocky piece of coast that jutted out into the ocean. It was far from any town or village, as Emerson liked it. The only company he usually had came in the form of passing boats and hungry seagulls. Emerson took another swig of rum and set his cup on the table. The wood bore the marks of 1,000,000 condensation rings from the rum mugs of history. He grumbled to himself and passed through the door to the spiral staircase. The doorbell rang again as he descended. With care, the final treacherous steps. He threw the door open to the howling wind. "Yar, I'm coming, I'm coming. Hold your seahorses." On the stoop, 2 kids huddled together, no older than 18. They clung to one another as the wind whipped at them, and the storm soaked them to their bones. "I'm sorry, sir," said the boy, raising his voice over the gale. "But our car broke down, and we're stranded. Can we please hold up with you until the storm has passed?" Emerson was not a people person, but he was also not a heartless monster either. He opened the door to the boy and the girl and guided them up the staircases. "Yar, come in, come in. You're wetter than water. I got some blankies upstairs. Come, let's get you and your lass dry. Me name's Emerson." The boy smiled and offered his hand despite the chill that shook him. "Thanks, man. You're the best, Harry. And this is Skyla." Emerson led them up the winding staircase to the lighthouse's upper room, lit by the beacon. He got some dry towels, stale and mud-eaten, but dry, and put the kettle on for warm tea. "Arr, you must be pretty frightened. What with you stranded in the dark and the rain, while the sea beats her chest like King Kong. She can be mighty fierce." The boy pulled a face and shook his head. He wrapped a towel around Skyla's shoulders before he tended to himself. "No, inconvenienced and uncomfortable, but not scared." Emerson frowned, but bit his tongue. He guided the youngsters to his couch. It wouldn't be the first time it got wet, and handed them mugs of steeping tea. He sighed and sat down opposite them on his old rickety chair. "And what, if you don't mind me asking, were you two doing out here this late at night?" The boy and the girl blushed. Harry started to say something, but then Skyla interrupted. She shoved her left hand into Emerson's face. A diamond glinted on her ring finger. "Harry proposed to me tonight," as the sun set over the water, staining it red, the color of love. Isn't that romantic? To Emerson, red was the color of blood, once you'd chummed the waters to lure in the big fish. But he didn't say this. "Yar, it do warm this old sea dog's heart to see young love in bloom. Why, my Batilda and I, we shared quite a torrid love affair, we did. But she's been sleeping with the fishes for longer'n you've been alive. I still carry her picture in this old locket here, which I wear around me neck at all times. Here, take a look at this beauty, lad, but don't lose your eye for the young lass now, aye." The boy blinked at the picture in the sea air-rusted locket. He did a double take. He seemed to struggle for words. His eyebrows knotted together like a bowline. "Sir, that's a manatee," Emerson recoiled. "You youngsters and your unrealistic Hollywood beauty standards. You shouldn't perpetuate such unhealthy attitudes towards appearances. It only fosters anxiety and insecurity. Yar, you might be young and lovely now, but see how pretty you look in 60 years. Let's see how you are once the sea's done rusted your lungs and your legs been took by an orca and a great white working in cahoots." The girl reached over and rapped a knuckle on his shin. A smirk touched the corners of her lips. "But sir, both your legs are still attached," Emerson yelped and tucked his legs back under his chair. "I jumped into the blood-stained brine, I did. Wrestled me legs back from the bellies of the respective beasts at the same time. Fought them both off, using nothing but me bare hands. I sewed them back on, I did, using nothing but a bit of old gut fishing line. I cleaned the wounds by spitting on 'em, then patched myself back up. It hurt for a while, but it didn't affect me well-trained balance on the deck. Yar, at sea you needs good sea legs, especially whilst Poseidon's throwing you about like a dusty old rug that your mama's trying to clean." The kids exchanged a glance and snickered. "That didn't happen, did it, sir?" asked the boy. "You're having us on." Emerson bit his lip. He knew how to get through to these young'uns, to teach them the proper respect they ought to have for the ocean. Emerson had seen waves taller than buildings and fish bigger than elephants. He'd seen currents sweep sailors to their doom in seconds. Emerson had seen men sink into the abyss as waves pummeled them like a boxer in a match with no referee to ring the bell. These kids had been on dry land, but the ocean was hungry. She could reach out and snatch you from the shore if she wanted. They had gotten lucky. The midnight tide hadn't pulled them out to sea, whilst the boy popped the question. Emerson got to his feet and slipped out the door to the spiral staircase. "I have something to show yer. You wait right here, my lovelies." Confused whispers came from behind him. Outside, the storm continued to rage. The wind screamed and the rain lashed. The ocean roared and threw itself against the lighthouse's base. The foundations shuddered. Emerson found the switch, covered in warning stickers, and flicked it. The lighthouse went dark. A small shriek came from above. He ascended in shadow, grinning at the panicked voices. He barged through the door and clicked the torch on. He illuminated his haggard face from below and bellowed. It was a dark and stormy night. Harry and Skyla screamed and clung to each other, their faces pulled in a rictus of terror in the torch's beam. "What the hell?" began the boy, but Emerson cut him off. The ocean was raging. The night was black. You couldn't tell where the sky ended and the water began. And we all knew that she, the creature, was out there hunting us. The hunters had become the hunted. A foghorn shattered the tension, deafening them all. Harry jumped up, knocking his chair over backwards. Skyla shrieked and threw her hands up to her face. A flick of a fish's tail later, the lighthouse shook around them. A great, wrenching metallic crunch rocked the world. Ice froze his limbs. He broke through the paralysis and staggered to the window. He shined his flashlight onto the rocks below. "Good God," whispered Emerson. The jagged stones had acted like a shark's teeth, puncturing the ship's hull. It leaned like a drunken sailor, 45 degrees to the side. On top, seamen clung to the rails, whilst others tried to scramble about the rain-wet deck. Baffled shouts punctured the storm's wailing. Boxes of cargo crashed into the surf. Some sailors tossed life rings into the brine to rescue men overboard. Emerson whimpered. This lighthouse had not had a single accident for almost 100 years. And now, in one swift hour, he'd caused a disaster. He should never have exaggerated the truth to impress these kids. The ocean was scary and beautiful enough as it was. It didn't need cheapening with manufactured myths and legends, but he'd tried to scare them into respecting the fierce hand of nature. Tried and failed. They thought he was an old coot who'd messed up on the job, and they wouldn't exactly be wrong now, would they? He'd forgotten the very lesson he'd been trying to teach. His shoulders slumped. Yar, I'm not the brightest bulb, methinks. Gloria. They liked to share these idyllic, quiet moments in front of the mirrored dressing table. George combing Georgina's hair. It was something soothing, calming, and therapeutic, a necessary and intimate ritual, an important part of their relationship, which they had been doing together since they couldn't remember, certainly since childhood. In complete silence, never a word spoken, Georgina in a catatonic state of mind, completely immobile, a trance-like state. George slowly, softly, gently glides the brush through her long tresses of hair. This quiet ritual went on for hours, quietly, blissful. They were inside a bubble of tranquility. Gloria watched on, grinning from ear to ear, lolling against the chair, propped up with cushions. Gloria had seen it all. Gloria was a gift, a valuable gift of subterfuge for George, a bribe from his parents to keep him quiet, keep his mouth shut, about the secret that must be kept in the family. No one, absolutely no one must know. You know that, George. Don't you? His parents would explain to the innocent ears of George. This is Gloria. You can whisper in her ear if you ever want to talk to someone about it. Okay? Gloria became the listener, the therapist. And then she would pass on the secret information to Georgina. Georgina was the stronger of the two, made of rock. Nothing disturbed or frightened Georgina. That's why George doted on Georgina. He knew he was weak. And she was so strong. She possessed the strength for both of them. Gloria was so pleased to be added to the family and to be an integral part of it. The family was wealthy. The father, a world-renowned specialist surgeon from a wealthy legacy. He was privileged from birth, nannies, boarding school. His pathway in life was constructed and planned before he was born, from generations prior and generations to come. The tried and trusted way. His marriage was arranged, with only a select few who could be considered a match in their world. In those high circles of society, she was perfect, of similar family status. She didn't lose any of her privileges. It was a perfect transition from her maternal family into her family of marriage. She didn't lose any sleep over the matter. Life continued on as normal. Gatherings, parties, friends. It was seamless. When she became pregnant shortly after the marriage, it made the headlines on the celebrity pages. The joyous ink leapt off the gossip pages. She demanded to be fully anesthetized for the birth. Pain was not a word in her personal experience. Dictionary. She was completely unaware of the conception, totally out of it. She could have given birth to a horse, and was equally unaware she had delivered twins. Gloria was selected as a gift, a treasure for George. She was token of unspeakable secrets, unfulfilled desires. Her appearance with her blonde, braided pigtails, gaudy red lips might have been misconstrued, but George hugged her lovingly from the very first time they met. His parents were incapable of showing affection, demonstrating their love with hugs and kisses, not in the normal sense. It was not accepted in their constrained, unemotional legacy, their upbringing, and it continued in this generational circle of supposedly refined upper-class family and friends. When Gloria arrived, George understood what he was missing. A feeling of unknown nostalgia for simpler circumstances, which he didn't have an inkling about or any comprehension that it existed. Another life, a different life, a life uncomplicated, without the subtle stresses or pressure continuously made by his parents. George always felt vulnerable, awkward, a feeling of an unfinished project in the presence of his parents. On the rare occasions he was allowed into company of his parents' friends, such as cocktail party events or saying farewell at nighttime, George was nervous, uncomfortable. Shyness overcame his speech as he stood dumb and gormlessly in front of the onlooking adults, inspecting George like an alien life form. "Strange boy," they would whisper as he turned his back on leaving the room. George heard the whispers, these overheard comments, like so many others, send him further into his interior cave of solitude and despair. At least George had Gloria to confide in, he always thought, and the thought consoled him. In the eyes of his parents, Gloria's arrival filled a gap. Gloria symbolized a desire for perfection and control over George, which was completely immoral. The family secret must be suppressed at all costs. George was getting older and wiser. Gloria was introduced with the sole intent of keeping the family secret secure. Everybody was aware that George was the weak link in the subterfuge, the conspiracy, the dark secrets of the family. Gloria was the guardian. She was central to it all, and that made her the gatekeeper to the whole incestuous situation. She was the overseer and protector. The only person Gloria confided in was Georgina. Gloria's secret was safe with Georgina. Doing a good job, is he? That's about all he is good for, combing your hair, Gloria said sardonically, without moving her lips like a ventriloquist dummy. George is a sweetie, stupid as an ass, but he is my loving brother, and I will always protect him, even from your foul mouth. Georgina replied defensively. He's so stupid. He can't hear us, or he ignores every word, the truth. He's a lame brain. Gloria continued her verbal attack. You are the smart one, the strong one in this family. Georgina, if it wasn't for you, we would still be in the clutches of those dinosaur parents, the molesting evil creeps. Gloria continued. Don't say a bad word about Mummy and Daddy like that. Shut that vile mouth of yours, Gloria. Georgina was getting agitated now, but George continued the slow grooming strokes, undeterred, and it seemed oblivious to the conversation between Georgina and Gloria. The smooth grooming strokes of brush helped Georgina to keep her temper, remain calm. I won't tell anybody what you did. Don't worry. Those abusers of innocent children deserved it. Justice was served. Only you. Georgina had the balls to do it. George doesn't have what it takes. Never did. He always hid behind you, scared of his own shadow. The stupid one. Gloria continued in her negative tone. I watched on for years as they took you to their bed for their evil desires. For years, Daddy wanted control, his evil desires, his manipulation, his family fun. And she, Mummy, followed, a willing assistant, always pickled in her normal, alcohol-fueled state of mind, anesthetized. She was a lush most of the time. Both were heartless, immoral bastards. I was used like a comfort blanket, a rag doll, to make it seem normal. Those twisted monsters whisper in Gloria's ear. Gloria will keep the secrets of the night. Gloria will make any pain go away. Tell Gloria, but don't tell anybody else. Gloria mimicked the parents' words to their sexually molested victim. They deserved what was coming. George dropped the hairbrush and went to Gloria and started hugging her, whispering in her ear. What did he say? Asked Georgina. He says he loves me. And will I forgive him? Will I forgive him for his weaknesses? Gloria replied. Always the same. He's that stupid. He thinks it's his fault. Gloria was angry. Don't be too hard on him. We need him to be his normal, complicit self. We need his continued silence. We need him to keep his mouth shut now, more than at any time. These are dangerous times. No slip-ups. We all need to stick together. Otherwise, there will be trouble for us all, including you, Gloria. Understand? Georgina continued to look into the mirror, but her steely eyes and tightly drawn mouth emphasized the words. It was a threat. Don't you trust me, Georgina, to keep your dirty, obscene family secrets locked away in my head? Gloria said in a challenging, teasing manner. She was goading Georgina. Georgina lifted her right hand. Both hands had been hidden from sight, low between her parted legs during the long grooming process. As she lifted the concealed right hand, one could now see she was holding the blade of the 9-inch carving knife, splashed in crimson blood. The blood stood out a dark, dull shade of red against the shiny silver blade of the knife. Slowly, she raised the blade higher and then held it above her head. She held the pose and slowly turned her upper body and head to face Gloria, unless you are looking for the same Gloria. I would recommend you keep your mouth shut, as you always have. It was the reason you were ingratiated into this family. Your loyalty has kept you alive and your dirty mouth tolerated. Your circumstances can change fatally if you start to change, my dear Gloria. Georgina glared at Gloria threateningly. Now, let's clean up the mess. They say no bodies, no crime. The Tragedy of Frederick XIV. The guards dragged a man through the gallows. His eyes were flushed and red, and his face was swollen from holding his breath, for he refused to allow even a single tear to fall. The guards pulled the man up the stairs. The soddened and weathered wood creaked and bounced with each step. They carried the man across the stage of the scaffold to the hangman, whose eyes were buried in the hollows of the Hessian burlap fastened to his face. A crowd had gathered in the gallows. Among them was King Theobald, the crown of the Northern Empire, who sat front and center of this spectacle. King Theobald raised his hand, and the crowd reduced its whooping to a whisper. Senti milione. You have been charged with, tried, and convicted of embezzlement and treason of the highest order. You packed your purloin purse with pilfers and compromised the integrity of our nation. You are hereby stripped of your duties as High Commander, and for your transgressions you shall reimburse the crown with your life. Senti drew a deep breath, but before the hangman could cinch the rope, Senti coughed to the crowd. I, Senti milione, am a convicted man, and I maintain my innocence. But since my sentence is irrevocable, I have only one request that I wish, in my final moments of life, to be granted. King Theobald flicked his wrist, and the hangman stepped away from the edge of the scaffold stage. And what might that be? Someone is missing from the crowd, and I would like for that person to be present. Seeing their face would comfort me. Who? Frederick XIV. Rory, a captain of the Northern Imperial Army, climbed out of the crowd and approached King Theobald. I shall fetch Frederick for you, sir. Very well. We shall resume upon your return. Ta. Frederick XIV stepped away from the window in his bedchamber. The spectators had gathered in the gallows below, and they were jeering loudly as the hangman held the nape of the man on the platform. Frederick threw his back to the wall near the window, working his thumb and pointer into the fissures of his forehead. One moment, I'm the chief officer, and in the next, I'll be High Commander. High Commander, I'll likely be crowned tomorrow. I must prepare. Frederick, at his desk, retrieved paper and a fountain pen, then began to write. Dearest King Theobald, our illustrious crown, I am most truly obliged to you. An image twinkled in his periphery. Across the room, above the mantel, there was a painting, a portrait of three men of similar stature and countenance to each other. Also to Frederick IV, but to a lesser degree. From on high, they stared down at Frederick XIV as he crossed the room towards them. Tomorrow, I shall be named High Commander of the Northern Imperial Army, and I will follow in your footsteps. And maybe one day, my personage will join yours in portraiture. He received 2 knocks at his door. Who's there? Celia, sir. Captain Rory would like to join your company. Frederick opened the door to reveal Celia, the chambermaid, and Rory, a step behind her. Rory. Sir, there has been a request made for you. What is the nature of this request? Am I allowed inside? Frederick ushered Rory inside. King Theobald has granted Senti one wish. Has he not been executed? In only a moment's time. But never mind that, Frederick. Senti's wish is to see you. Frederick flew across the room and away from Rory. See me? For what reason? Frederick, you are but his dearest friend. What is the reason for your delay? Frederick turned his back to Rory. There is no reason other than that I would not want to see a hanging in the gallows. But you have witnessed your fair share of executions, none of which have been dear friends, Frederick said. So what shall I tell Senti? Tell Senti that my love is with him, and that his visage shall be forever reflected in my duties. Of High Commander, Frederick nodded his head. I'll likely be crowned tomorrow. His ill repute shall be absolved with me. Ill repute? Are you suggesting that you believe Senti to be guilty? Senti was convicted. Frederick kicked at the lint littering the floor. Whether I believe that he is guilty or innocent matters not. His shadow will swing on the gallows, inevitably. What am I hearing, sir? Have you not shed a tear at the thought of his absence? Yes, many times. Then how could you dare allow him to leave without one final show of your affection? I think that it is best for both he and I to not meet under such conditions, no matter how sentimental. Frederick turned his back to Rory. The crowds below began to bellow beneath the cloudy sky. Rory sneered, slamming the door behind him. Frederick XIV to the portrait. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, I hope that after the ceremony tomorrow, you'll acknowledge me as one of your own, an aurora in the sky of our heritage. I hope that I will have proven myself worthy in thine eye. King Theobald belted out from the gallows. Centimilione. Frederick returned to the window, but did not look out. You have been charged with, tried, and convicted of embezzlement and treason of the highest order. You packed your purloined purse with pilfers and compromised the integrity of our nation. You are hereby stripped of your duties as High Commander, and for your transgressions, you shall reimburse the crown with your life. Frederick's face twisted centripetally into his head, wringing out but one tear that trekked the contour of his cheek to his chin. King Theobald. Hangman, allow Centimilione to pay his debts. The wood of the gallows outside creaked. The lone tear from Frederick's face croaked when it splattered across the floor, and the sound of Senti's final grunt echoed. To patrilineage, the wind stirred recklessly, carrying waves of rainwater across the land. Lightning found Frederick's bedchamber, and thunder clapped in his ear, waking him from his slumber. He held his aching head. Celia, Celia. The chambermaid rushed inside with a candelabra. Yes, sir. I cannot see. With the candle from her candelabra, she lit more candles, placing them at various spots throughout the room. Fetch me a glass of water. My head is tender and sore. Celia left the room. Frederick laid on his pillow until he heard a voice. Son. Frederick opened his eyes, and standing at his bedside was his father, Frederick the 13th. We must go now. Frederick could see his grandfather, Frederick the 12th, staring out of the window, and Frederick 11th, his great-grandfather, admiring the portrait. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, why must you leave now? I seek wise counsel. Your ways have offended us, Frederick XI said. There is no way that we could accept you as you are, Frederick the 12th said, and we will not offer wise counsel. Your legacy is now your own. Frederick the 14th said. Thunder hammered, and lightning seemingly struck the center of the bedchamber, forcing Frederick the 14th to shield his eyes from the blinding light. Frederick opened his eyes. Father, Father. Frederick searched the room, but they were gone. In their wake, he padded across the parquet floor to his mantel. He squinted at the portrait, and what he saw poisoned his heart. Only the 3 heads of his patriarchy remained. Their bodies had disappeared entirely. Celia handed him the glass of water. Are you okay? Frederick kept his face in the fold of his elbow. He thumbed up at the portrait. Tell me what you see, Celia. Your great-grandfather, grandfather, and father. Can you see the whole of them? Yes, sir, I can. I must rest. Frederick chugged his glass of water and sent Celia away before climbing sluggishly into bed. He laid with his eyes wide. The torrent raged outside. I declare war. Frederick snapped his fingers. More spirits. He reclined in his gilded chaise lounge with a glass in his fist, which Celia refilled. Frederick finished the glass in one gulp, then dropped it. The thick crystal thumped across the varnished wood. He stumbled from the chaise lounge and grabbed a hold of 2 harlots, and they guided him to the bed. Present were 2 officers, Francis and Giles, each heaped with a pair of women, and spirits in their midst. How's it feel to have an empire under your command? Francis jeered. Grand, and the luxury to rest on your laurels in the lap of an impregnable kingdom, Giles said. Swell. Frederick looked to the women. Kiss me, will you? The 2 women pressed their faces into his. he received a knock at the door. "Who dares disturb me?" Frederick burped. "Celia, sir." "Are you aware, Celia, that we are engaged in official military duties?" "Yes, sir." "Then why do you bother our securing of this great nation?" "The chief officer says he must see you now." "Allow the sap in." Rory rushed in. "Mr. Rory, chief officer, have you come to join in the luxuries afforded to our ranks?" "No, sir." "Then why do you—" Frederick burped again. "Why do you dare interrupt our briefing?" "The Southern Empire, sir," Rory said. Frederick slurred. "Yes, they have declared war." Frederick puckered up instantaneously. His eyelids spread wide. His pupils shrunk to little black dots, and his eyes receded far into skull. He folded his dressing gown across his chest and crossed his legs. "The South has declared war, you say? What must we do?" "But you are the High Commander, right?" King Theobald rejected their demands and accepted their declaration of war. He has since issued a decree. "Very well." Frederick stumbled to the center of the room. "Everyone out, save for the chief officer." Only Frederick and Rory remained. "High Commander, what is your plan? Our nation's security is at stake." I know. With his arms crossed high on his chest, Frederick crept across the room to his mantle. He laid his head into his rested elbow. He looked up to his portrait. 3 silhouettes now stained the canvas. "Chief Officer," Rory observed Frederick's constitution with a hawk's eye. "Yes, High Commander?" "Look up at the portrait and tell me what you see. Your great-grandfather, grandfather, and your father. Why? Do you see the whole of them?" "Yes, I do." "Heavens, gather the rest of our staff. I will meet you all in the Hall of Mirrors." "Yes, sir." Rory exited the bedchamber. Frederick to the emptied portrait. "How could you have abandoned me at such an inopportune time?" Frederick's eyes were deep, dark portholes that revealed no soul. "Celia," Celia entered. "Yes, sir." He raised his glass. "More spirits, please." 3. The soul of a man. Frederick hunched forward while clearing the gown from his feet, tottered into the Hall of Mirrors. In the center was an expansive table with 15 chairs measuring its circumference. The army staff silently observed the High Commander's disposition. Frederick looked them all over and pointed out an unfamiliar figure, a kimono-clad, ashen-faced woman. "Who's she?" "Kitty." She lifted her face, slightly peeking under her brow. "A medium." "Why should we need a—" Frederick burped. "A medium? She will be of assistance as we plot the fate of our empire. She couldn't possibly serve as our wise counsel. We, the staff of the Northern Imperial Army, conceded that neither of us but one is able to offer wise counsel. But you are the best of the best, are you not?" "Our very best was plucked from among us," Rory said. "Now we must seek wise counsel elsewhere." "Where else? From beyond the grave." Frederick waved his hand. Under no circumstances shall we do such a thing. High Commander, you must understand, lives are at stake. Your reputation is at stake. And since you cannot lead us, then we must source our dearly departed friend. Frederick turned his back, observing the staff through the mirrors. Senti milione, senti milione, senti. Frederick humbled into the circle of fog on the glass. You remember him, don't you, High Commander? Right. Of course. Why wouldn't I? A great man. Then there should be no objections. Rory turned to the medium. Kitty, if you will, please bring to us our dearly departed Senti Milione. Kitty placed 2 Japanese taiko drums on the table before her and clanged them rhythmically. She left them alone, and the rhythm continued in her absence. She leaped weightlessly from the floor. With the fabric flagging from her frail frame, she raced across the polished mahogany from end to end, mumbling a chant. She stopped. On her back, she convulsed atop the table, arching her body before falling to the floor. From the floor, a figure rose, the soul of Senti Milione. The army staff could not believe their eyes. Senti? Rory, it is I. The 2 hugged. Staff, what a pleasure to be in your presence once again. Senti found that Frederick was huddled in a corner of glass. Frederick, my dear friend, join us. How? Frederick crawled to the table side. It has been so long since I last saw your face. My final request was to see you, but you didn't show. I know. How come? I couldn't bear to see you in that moment. Senti caressed Frederick's head. It's okay. Senti looked to the rest of the staff. So, why have you summoned me? Rory pounced. Our great empire is at war. There should be no issues then. A Frederick is amongst you. We seek wise counsel. Rory continued. Senti looked down. Frederick IV avoided Senti's gaze. Senti jousted Frederick. Have you spoken to your father? Frederick was silent. Well, have you? Rory barked. Yes. And your grandfather? Senti continued. Yes. Your great-grandfather too? Yes. Great. What did they say? Frederick broke free and ran to a mirror across the room. This cannot be, he whispered to himself. Senti followed. What's the matter? Frederick broke free once more and darted to another mirror. This can not be. How could it be? Senti met him there as well. Frederick didn't resist. Senti, tell them how good of a friend you were to me. Frederick brushed Senti's ghastly complexion. You were a good friend, but I was not. Rory stood up at the table. What do you mean, my friend? Senti asked. Frederick looked up at the ceiling, but seemingly beyond it. For my entire life, I walked the path of my predecessors, but I could never keep pace. And now, they have sprinted far ahead of me. They came to me in the night and informed me that they must leave my side, that I had offended their honor, and ripped my name from the annals of our history. What could you have done? that was so abhorrent, Frederick wept until he regained control of himself. When you called out for from the gallows, I was afraid to see you. You broke the chain that linked me to my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. All I could see was their scorn and shame. Frederick looked into Senti's troubled eyes. After the celebration, hosted in King Theobald's honor, he had you arrested. Right, and you were tried. Yes, and subsequently convicted. This is all true. The punishment for the charges leveled against you, hanging in the gallows, was fair, but the evidence, it was fabricated. The staff gasped. I knew it, Rory screamed. That evidence, in light of the celebration that you hosted, I knew it would be the perfect foil, that the pride of King Theobald would believe it. And he did. I told him that you had embezzled monies as well as colluded with another nation, and he accepted my word as bond. The staff sucked in all of the air in the room. Senti pushed away from Frederick with haste. How could you? How dare you? You knew how much that position meant to me, and how right I was for it. You had me killed to assuage your vainglorious greed. Senti was so heated that he could breathe fire. He beamed his scalding eyes at Frederick. You fool. And because you are so, I wish for you to suffer a fool's fate. Senti spun away from them all and reduced himself to a bended form. Kitty reclaimed her seat. Hiding his face in the arm of his dressing gown, Frederick watched as Rory crept slowly to him. Rory rested a knee. I knew from the beginning that you had something to do with it, but no one trusted my word. You call yourself a friend? I should spit upon your trifling head. You do not deserve anyone's pity. Frederick shielded furthermore, his face pressured to burst with tears that refused to fall. You send a courageous man, an honorable man, a competent man to the gallows to satisfy your own selfish pride? And then attempt to replace him with your pathetic inadequacies? Well, I hope you enjoyed yourself, because your time amongst our ranks has expired. Rory stood over Frederick. You drunken coward. You'll believe anything. There is no war. The Southern Empire never declared war upon us. Frederick's face red of shame. Carry him to a cell. He'll stand before King Theobald in the morning, and the hellhounds will drag him from the gallows come nightfall. The staff lifted Frederick from the floor, and he didn't resist. He could barely lift his head as they carried his limp body towards the exit. All that Frederick XIV could manage was a mumble. Frederick relaxed altogether as the air hissed from his drunken lips. Plight at the museum. The car's tires skidded over the rain-wet road, squealing in the night. Edward Reiki gritted his teeth. He didn't like driving this fast, but the situation called for it. This had been the first night after changing the museum's exhibits, his first actual decision on the job. At midnight, he'd gotten a call. The motion sensor alarms had detected someone inside the building. Someone had broken in. What a disaster. He gripped the steering wheel in a white-knuckle grip and fought to keep control of his 2-ton beast. Burnhelm Museum's windows glinted in his headlights like a cat's eyes in the dark. No lights were on. The place lay in shadow. The multi-story building sat still. The alarm's bleat rose over the roar of the rain and the car's rumble. Seeing the place with black eyes whilst the alarm squealed made Edward's stomach shrivel. He wished he had someone else with him now. He had goosebumps. Hell, he'd even take the previous curator, Stanley Graham's. Stanley had lost a few of his marbles as he'd aged. He'd covered the museum walls with paintings of cute puppies and kittens. Puppies and kittens only had a place in a museum if they were the early pets of cave people. Stanley had also left him a note. Dear Edward, there is something you should know about the Burnhelm Museum. You see, there is life in the pain. Stanley had not managed to write beyond that. The word ended in a ragged scratch as the pen flew off the page. The heart attack had ended Stanley's capacity to use words, breathe, or pump blood. Edward assumed the guy was trying to tell him something about getting old, but he'd been unable to figure it out yet. It might not even mean anything. The man was a few sandwiches shy of a picnic. Edward killed the engine and dashed through the rain to the museum's open mouth. He held the collar of his jacket over his head as he ran to try to keep the torrent at bay. Edward tested the front door. It didn't budge. Whoever it was, they had not broken in through here or through any of the front windows. Edward fished the key out of his pocket, shivering as his shoes filled with water, and opened the door. Inside, the rain quieted down to a steady hiss. The alarm's bleat was much louder in here. A potent, earthy smell permeated the air. Edward rumpled his nose and raised his hands to his ears. Where was the damn thing? He knew it was around here somewhere. He fumbled in the dark, slapping the fob of his keys against the wall. This task was so much easier in daylight. At last, he found the alarm box, and some magic from the fob silenced the screech. He sighed, his ears thanking him for ending their torment. The darkened halls of the museum waited for him in silence. A low rumble of thunder vibrated through the floor beneath his feet for a very long time. A resounding thump, like that of a gun, echoed down the corridors. The blood turned to ice in his veins. Yes, there was somebody else here with him. Here, in his home, away from home, inside his dream. How dare they? It hurt his soul. When he was a boy, His grandfather had taken him to a natural history museum. The cave dwellers and their early tools had ignited wonder. The fossils and dinosaur bones had cast a magic. The Tyrannosaurus, Rex, mammoths, and megalodons had inspired terror and admiration. Edward wanted only to share the same awe he'd felt the first time. It was an honorable goal. There was an obvious way to achieve this. He had to be the best museum curator ever. But one thing had stood in his way, at least until now. He always started afresh. He came in, did away with the old, and swept in with the new. Edward couldn't stand to leave something standing that wasn't his. It didn't matter whether it worked. He discarded functional systems and inadequate systems. Unfortunately, such an attitude did not make him many friends. And so, he'd bounced around from museum to museum, never quite reaching the desired position. But now, he was Burnhelm Museum's curator. He'd realized his lifelong ambition. At last, after so much struggle. And now this? Youngsters and drug-addled maniacs breaking in, with their spray paints and their broken bottles of beer and their, good God, used condoms. This place was his, and he wasn't about to hand it over to some hooligans or street urchins pulling a prank. Edward scowled and closed the door behind him and locked it. He hit the lights and called out to the intruders. "It's too late to escape," he said. "The police are already on their way." A lie. "You never should have come here." A high-pitched coughing sound bounced around the building. It came from many places at once, back and forth. Edward's eyes widened. There were many criminals in here, and they were laughing at him. Shaking, he clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms, and marched into the museum. It took him longer than it should have to notice what was wrong with his exhibits. The paintings were empty. Jaw hanging down to his chest, Edward stumbled to a halt. He squinted at a painting that had, until tonight, held a picture of a T. Rex roaring before a Cretaceous backdrop. His fury fell away to dumbfoundedness. He tried to articulate his confusion, but all that came out was, Next to him, flies were buzzing about something brown. It was about 2 feet long and approximately 6 inches in diameter. Excrement. Edward blinked. It wasn't unheard of for vagrants to soil the places they entered with their waste. But no human on the planet could produce this much. Had these lunatics squished their leavings together to fool him into thinking that the deep rumble vibrated through the earth once more? Edward jumped and squealed and spun around. Nothing was behind him. His heart hammered high up in his chest. It seemed to lodge at the base of his throat, making breathing hard. If he didn't get his pulse under control, he'd end up the same way as Stanley Graham's, dead of a heart attack. Some distant part of Edward's mind was piecing bits together. Little by little, you see, there is life in the pain. Had he meant to write, "There is life in the paintings"? Was that why he'd covered the walls with pictures of cute baby animals? So that, when they came to life, something was moving at the periphery of his vision on both sides. At last, Edward understood. It's not always a good idea to change everything and start afresh when you take over someone else's role. They might have had a good reason for doing the things they did. You should at least acquaint yourself with the position before scrapping their work. But it was a bit late now. Yet, for one split second before his agonizing death, he felt once more that awe he'd experienced as a child. And then the raptors had him, safe and sound. Safe and sound. 7:15 a.m. Go downstairs. Phone fully charged. Remove cable. Stare at phone wallpaper. Not familiar. Photo of huge oak in West Park at end of my street, where Rich proposed. Maybe took it yesterday. Maybe not. Not sure. Stare more. Check for messages. Mum, Sarah, Rich. Rich? Not heard from him in ages. Is he okay? Oh, he's replying to me. I didn't message him. I must have. Yes, look. Asked if he had a good weekend. Sent 23:03 yesterday. Was in bed by 10. Must have got up. Come downstairs. Forgotten. Sleepwalking. Again. Getting regular now. See a doctor. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Rich is fine. Am I okay? Reply. Short and sweet. Don't encourage the ex from hell. Don't know why I messaged him at all. Ping. It's your move on Words with Friends. What's that? Looks like Scrabble game. Never heard of it. Why is it on my phone? Quick look around it. I have 5 games in play. 5. It's my move in all of them. Didn't drink last night. Uninstall Words with Friends. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Coffee. Cinnamon roll. Sofa. Slightly more awake. Check phone again. More from Rich. Why did you get back in touch? Want to meet up? Ignore. Sarah. She says thanks with thumbs up. Thanks for what? Scroll messages. Yes, she can borrow my copy of Catch-22. Still own Catch-22? Thought I lost it ages ago. Scroll more. Told Sarah I found it. Don't remember that. Check bookshelves later. Reply to Mum. Yes, still coming for dinner on Thursday. Thursday? When did we plan that? Never mind. I'm free. I'll go. Add to calendar. Entry for Saturday. What's that? Date with Tom. No details. No memory of this. Message Tom. Hi, are we meeting this Saturday? 8 a.m. now. Ring for doctor's appointment. 32nd in the queue. Sorry, no more appointments today. Please call back 8 a.m. tomorrow. System is enough to make me need a doctor. Whisper. Safe and sound, safe and sound. Bookshelves. No sign of catch 22. Check 3 times. What's this? Copy of Never Let Me Go lying on top of other books. I never do that. Do I? Don't remember this edition. Cover is blue with picture of cassette tape. Thought mine was orange with girl in green dress. Flick through it. Pages dog-eared. I never do that. Spine cracked. I never do that. Must be mistaken. Phone beeps. Rich. I can see you're reading my messages. Tom replies, Hi, Grace. Yes? Royal Oak, 2 p.m. Saturday. Remember? You okay? I'm worried about you. He's not the only one. Why don't I remember things I should? Phone announces. There's movement at the front door. Letterbox clangs. Amazon delivery. Thanks, I think. Not expecting anything. Rip open cardboard zip. Copy of Catch 22. Green cover. Same edition I lost. Open Amazon app on phone. Ordered book yesterday. Did I? Didn't know Sarah wanted it till now. Or did I? Coincidence? Put phone down. Deep breath. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Phone alarm sounds. 9 a.m. Take pills. Yes. Take pills. Go to kitchen. Find clean glass. All glasses are clean. When did I wash up? Tap. Water. Pills. Swallow. Running low. Need to order repeat prescription. Open browser on phone. Doctors is bookmarked. Multiple tabs already open. What are they? First tab. Google seems about right. Second tab. British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy. Have I been looking for a therapist? Maybe I need one? Psychiatrist, perhaps more useful? Third tab. Royal Oak. I did book a table for Saturday, maybe. Check for confirmation email. Open Gmail. Premium bonds. You have won a prize. Go to Premium Bonds app. App not there. Check all screens. No sign. Must have uninstalled. Why? We'll check for prizes on website later. Message from Rich. Don't open it. Search Gmail for Royal Oak. Booking confirmation. 3 people, 2 p.m. Saturday. 3 people? Me? Tom? Who else? Message Tom. Who are we meeting on Saturday? He's not online. Phone rings. Withheld number. Hello? Man's voice. Is that Grace? I'm responding to the enquiry you made through my web website. Are you still looking for a therapist? Did I do that? Hang up. Rings back. Don't answer. Too weird. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. More coffee. Must order meds. Back to browser. Bookmarks. Medical practice online. Order repeat prescription. Done. Bookmarks. What did I just see? Lingerie site? Wasn't looking at lingerie. Click on link. There are 4 items in your basket. Click on basket. Red peephole bra and matching satin G-string. Pink see-through baby doll. Black crotchless bodysuit. All in my size. None to my taste. Shopping for Tom? Not his thing either. More what Rich would like. Ugh. Empty basket. Delete bookmark. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Phone beeps. Tom, I don't know who we're meeting. You said it was a surprise. See messages from last night. Were you drunk? Surprise for me too. Check last night's messages with Tom. 23. Message deleted. 23:08. Message deleted. 23:12. Message deleted. Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Not drunk. Possibly not fully conscious. Sleep texting? Need stronger pills. Call doctor again tomorrow. Good news needed. Open premium bonds. Website online. Password not recognized. Type again. Slowly. Password not recognized. Type again. Very slowly. You only have one more attempt before your account is locked. Was I drunk last night? No. Worked till 8. Home. Showered. Changed. Bed by 10. Back to kitchen. Open booze cupboard. 4 ciders and half bottle of Bailey's missing. Sleep drinking? Whisper. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. No hangover. Didn't drink all that. Brought friend home. Who drinks? Bed by 10 makes no sense. Would remember someone else in house. Check spare room anyway. No one there. Bed not slept in. Phone beeps. Rich. I have to look. I miss you. Are you ignoring me? Check all rooms. Front door locked. Back door locked. Spare key. Gone. Message Tom. Have you got my spare key? Phone beeps. Sarah. Hey chick. You okay today? Don't suppose you can send me the pic of that new restaurant we saw last week? I knew I'd forget the name. Ha ha ha. Tom replies. Not this time. Gave it back to you on Friday. Are you okay? Check camera roll for Sarah. Multiple pics of girl asleep in bed. Wait, can't have taken these pics. That's me. Safe and sound. Safe and sound. Blood rain. It wasn't the red aliens that were the problem. It was the voodoo high priests that caused all the mischief. Monkey hands, parrot beaks, and baboon skulls were one thing. But when the blood rains came, all of the usual cons kicked into high gear. The mantis-like, spindly red alien surveyed my vegetables with an air of fascination. He stopped on the okra, holding up a stalk and studying it. He was dressed in ripped, whitewashed jeans and a Blink 182 t-shirt. But behind his disguise was a standard silver spandex jumpsuit, like they all wore when they came into town to creep around. Whatever else you could say about the red aliens, they were creepers by nature, with no sense of boundaries. I just wanted him to move along. I clenched a final notice of foreclosure auction in my hand, as if taking out my anger on the paper would save the family ranch. Yahya Gabon took the deed to our ranch in foreclosure. Yahya was a cattle herder, but before that, he had been a TAF general and still had pull with the government. Yahya was hard, implacable, unyielding, a real monster. Yahya once shot and killed a 6-year-old boy playing in his grazing pastures while the child begged for his life. The laws allowed one to protect their land from intruders. When asked why he'd done it, Yahya had said, "The signs on the perimeter say, 'Stay out, trespassers shot on sight.' Wouldn't mean nothing if I didn't follow through." The Police Nacional who had questioned him said, "Yahya, the kid was illiterate. Guess he should have paid more attention in school." Yahya had said. The way Yahya looked at it was, when he set his eye on what's yours, it was his if he could find a way to take it from you. Uncle Kofi was missing an eye from turning the other cheek in a fight as a boy. But the rock in the other kid's hand had landed just right and shot the eyeball clean out. Uncle Kofi was a pacifist who wouldn't even swat a mosquito. So this was no contest. I had told Uncle Kofi we should just give up the ranch. We couldn't afford it. But Uncle Kofi was superstitious. He believed that fate could be wooed. A few weeks earlier, I had gone with Uncle Kofi to the Ako Desawa fetish market and met with Guédenon Benoit, the voodoo man. We entered his office, as he called it, which was a hut with a square-framed doorway lined with human skulls that looked like a no-frills mine shaft leading into a catacomb. The standing air inside was stiff, musky, and moist. The walls of the inner chamber were filled with the dried heads of dogs, monkeys, birds, snake souls, and every imaginable living thing you could think of. You could almost hear the animal sounds echo from the clay walls. Uncle Kofi gasped at the abundance of spirits filling this hovel. I did not share his sense of wonder. I joked to myself, internally, that this was the great roadkill emporium of Lomé. "Here it is," Guédenon said. his rounded jowl stubbled with patches of white, and his bald head shining from the torchlight. The basket was filled with little dried chameleons, with their helmet-shaped heads adorned with horns and bony lumps, like modern-day dinosaurs. It smelled like furry jerky, dried in the humid, tropical breeze. Yes, here we are. After putting a handful of chameleons in a basket, Guédanon gathered a handful of dried parrots, each withered down to the size of a famished mouse. Now, to change your luck, you will grind up the chameleon and grind up the parrot. Guédanon depicted the grinding while he spoke, taking up a pewter bowl and mallet to make the demonstration, the torchlight reflecting off his bald forehead. You will mix this with soap and bathe yourself in it. Do this 2 times a day. 3 days, not a day more, not a day less. Uncle Kofi tapped Guédanon on the shoulder while he looked for some other nonsense to sell us. Did you hear about the lullaby? You mean about the strangers whose minds could not be read? They were talking about these totems at the village gates by our farm that look like men sitting cross-legged, with arms extruded and heads of black tar, with seashells for eyes. The guardians, or Dulaba, are supposed to be able to scan the minds of foreigners entering the village to discern if they have ill intent. I heard that the Westerners, the lanky ones, who appeared before the blood rains, I heard that none of the priests could discern their purpose from the Duleba. Uncle Kofi said. It is true, Guédanon told him. I wanted to scream. They are red aliens, you moron. No one knows what they want. But I couldn't say anything, or I'd be committed. I was the only one who could see them ever since I was a child. I had been hiking on Mont Agu, exploring its ridges, when I saw a light in the mist and stumbled upon their cliffside observatory. Normally, it was cloaked, but something about the vapors in the mist had screwed with the effect, did something to the light. When I walked into what looked like a temple from the outside, I saw a screen wrapping around the length of the chamber in a semicircle. Large, spindly red, mantis-like creatures with 4 legs on their hind parts were engrossed in the readings and images on their screens, tapping away with long, bony fingers on the consoles in front of them. One of them turned its hooded eyes and triangular face in my direction and screamed. The pincers on the sides of its mouth flaring in fright. A group of them rushed toward me. I shielded my face, but they were not violent. That was when they gave me the scarab beetle amulet that allowed me to recognize them despite their cloaking tech, and explained to me about the bright blue marble we inhabit. They said, "It is not that Earth is special. There are plenty of habitable worlds with natural wonders. It is the size of the moon that counts. Our mission is to scan the cosmos to find other worlds that can host life. Other worlds with just the right size of moon. I had pressed the aliens as to why this was the case, and they had elaborated and explained everything in great detail. But I couldn't understand much of it. The only worlds that host life are those worlds with a moon that is just the right size to create a total solar eclipse, one of the red aliens said. And once that sacred syzygy goes out of balance, or is disrupted, life moves on. I had asked why they didn't just place moons around any planets with the right characteristics. He said, "There is a directive against playing God. Each civilization rises and falls on its own merits. When the time comes, a people either mature and venture out from their home or are snuffed out." It sounded dramatic back then, but these days, I don't know that a fair judge would deem us worthy of salvation, least of all us Togolese, who were forever finding reasons to kill and brutalize one another. The red aliens come from a sad, timeless dimension, much like Togo. On their world, there are tiny microbes in the soil that cover everything in shades of red. The microbes are in the air, the soil, the water, and can lay dormant for centuries, which is what is causing the blood rains. So much of this stuff is filtered out of the observatory that when they are here, they are literally pumping red dye into the clouds, day in and day out. In Togo, the next calamity is always waiting right around the corner, and word travels fast in Lomé. To stir people into a panic only takes the smallest of rumors. Strange lights flashing around Mont Agu. Tall, spindly men in strange clothing, loitering in the market. Match that up with omens like blood rain and a lunar eclipse, and the entire populace was stewing with anxiety and murmuring up a storm. Especially Uncle Coffee. It was great for the priests. But you know what terror and intrigue is bad for? Selling vegetables and fattening cows, and for all of the divination and soothsaying about how the bloodshed of decades gone by would be punished unless the land was purified. How those cries reaching to heaven would compel the Almighty to blot out the sun. Despite all of that, all this voodoo accomplished was to tear into old wounds and inspire fresh political violence. Everyone in the suburban villages and the slums blamed someone for their troubles and sought protection or aid from the priests. The radicals blamed the Union Party and the rich Kabyé tribe for subjugating the masses and censoring speech. For this and for that, and prayed for their downfall. The Union Party blamed the radicals for deceiving the public with lies and doubled down on censorship. And the disputes were much the same in the suburbs. Each side thought the other evil. Each side saw the issue as one-sided, good versus evil. In a way, each side was right, and each side was wrong. And our people, splintered in 1,000 factions, with no unifying principle, pointed fingers at each other, much the same as our governors did. And old feuds spilled out into bloodshed. And Yahya had sent a man to tell Uncle Kofi he'd be coming to the ranch the next day. And it was time we cleared out. I gripped the crumpled notice in a tight fist and looked up at the stranger, the red alien at my vegetable stall in the Lomé Grand Market, grabbed one of my best okra plants and gave it a once-over, not knowing I could see through his disguise. "How much for one of these?" he asked in French. "Why are you here?" "I am looking for vegetables to thicken a stew." "Cut the shit," I said. "We've been having blood rain for the past 2 months." The red alien laughed heartily. "It's just from dust kicked up into the atmosphere from a dust storm. For 2 months? Dust doesn't take 2 months to settle. Maybe it is some kind of algae, like a red tide. It stained all my white clothes. It burned the leaves off the trees. People are using it to tattoo skin." "What do you think it is?" "I know what it is. Red alien bugs. What else?" His buggy eyes bulged, and his forehead furrowed. Then he settled into realization. "You're her. You're Dora Igwe. Dora the Explorer. The one who found us in the flesh. Do you want to come watch the eclipse with us?" "Why would I do that?" "It is an important celestial event. No disrespect. But it gets dark once a day. It's called night. I really don't get the novelty." "You wouldn't, would you?" "I guess it's like the suddenness of the enveloping darkness. It is metaphorical. Sometimes, you know, it is later than you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know, your people believe that war and bloodshed are like a virus, that it infects even the sun and the moon. And when the sun and moon get to quarreling, that brings about the eclipse, a final warning to change your ways." Those are just Batamaliba folk stories. They say the first mothers, Puka Puka and Kuyekok, told the villagers that the darkening of the sun was a warning to make amends for old feuds and live in peace, and the light will return. You are a spacefaring team of scientific explorers. You know this is an astrological, mathematical event. It has nothing to do with violence. Don't be so sure, child. There is much you do not understand. As the red alien turned and walked up the long, dusty road to the forest switchbacks, he turned and said, "Come watch with us, if you want." In the observatory, we waited for the eclipse. The red aliens were frantic. The one from earlier, who I'd nicknamed Tommy, took the controls and lifted the ship to a hover. "We've got to find a better vantage point," he said, as the ship floated through the Tongolese countryside outside Lomé. I could feel the eerie shadow chasing us down. The sky was full of fast-moving clouds, and a low mist hung to the valley floor, slinking down the mountain slopes and resting on the fields. The ship came to rest in Yahya's grazing lands, and the moon obstructed the sun. The red aliens gasped with a sound like the whistling of the wind. Like I said, though, I'm not superstitious. The whole thing seemed a bit overblown to me, but there it was, the total eclipse. A black orb with the faintest halo of red, set against a black, overcast, and moonless sky. Tommy turned to another red alien, who I'd known for years, and had nicknamed Freddy, and said, "The satellite has started moving too close. It is only a matter of time now. Isn't everything?" Freddy asked. "Hey, what is he talking about?" I asked. "Don't you worry, child," Freddy said. "When the time has come, it will all happen very quickly. She doesn't know we are here for the moon," Tommy blurted out. "It is just the right size for the colony in HD 1106-7, Freddy said. Freddy made a gesture to shush him. But it was too late. I had heard it. So, for all our worries about our earthly disputes, this was what the end of the world looked like. At least I wouldn't end up being homeless. That had been the thought I'd been obsessing over for days. I went to look out the back window, and it was just like Freddy had said. It was coming quickly. Yahya was in the cab, rolling the excavator toward the ship, and the dipper and bucket were swinging down and about to crash through the ceiling. The sound was deafening. Shards of metal and other materials rained down. Wires and diodes and mechanical pieces pelted our heads and the ground. The red aliens shrieked. Tommy was holding Freddy like a kid in a theater, caught with an unexpected jump scare. I ran out in the fields, under the dark, moonless sky. Yahya raised the bucket over and over, caving in the roof of the ship and tearing huge chunks of the fuselage out into his fields. Yahya was smoking a Cuban cigar, and I could hear him yelling, "Serves you right. Trespassers." I guess a similar thing would happen soon to our ranch house, in the family for 5 generations. Maybe the barn, too. That seemed to be the way of things, to tear down the old to make way for the new. Especially here in Togo, Tommy made it out of the ship, only to be met by the blast of a shotgun. "Got one," Yahya shouted. I just watched, frozen. The blast tore Tommy's torso nearly in half, felling him. The blood poured and oozed out onto the dark fields. The pool of blood was red, just like ours. I guess, however different we are on the outside, maybe all living things bleed red. We are a thirsty bunch, the living hungering after that red nectar, to stir it, to shed it, to pool it, and collect it. Then Yahya turned to me and pointed the shotgun at my face. "Run," he said. "Get off my land." And I ran through the pitch-dark fields, in the cool of the eclipse, crying as I waited for a gunshot that never came. Yahya yelled after me, "Enjoy your home while you can. I'll be coming for it." And he laughed, a bellowing stomach laugh, an eerie, chortling, bone-chilling laugh. Inevitable, unquenchable, soulless, and as I ran, tripping on rocks, legs cut by tall grasses, I saw sirens in the night. At least 12 SUVs. The Gendarmerie Nationales, the National Guard. They were coming for Yahya, alerted by the gunshots and the carnage. A tall, friendly Fed with a pock-marked face jumped out of one of the vehicles and tried to grab me. "It's okay now. We've got this," he said. But I wrestled away from him. As I made it to the clearing and the dirt road, I dared a glance back at the haloed specter of the eclipse. I hoped Uncle Kofi would be back at the kitchen table, waiting for me with some vegetable soup, blissfully impervious to the warring entities ravaging our lands. The blood rains fell in a torrent, coating the dirt road in a river of blood. I guess not all monsters are created equal. Ours take life without reason or remorse, just because they can. A sliver of light emerged from the fading eclipse as I reached the drive to the ranch house, lighting my path, warming the shadows. Uncle Coffee was at the door, the smell of the fetish soap on his skin. "Our luck is changing," he said. "Jingles." I moved the knife quickly, slicing with apt purpose. The bell of the cat's collar fell to the floor. Jingle, jingle. This was the third time I've done this since we first got this cat. I just can't stand the jingling of the collar, and I wanted it to look like the cat had somehow clawed it off, or had rubbed it against something outside, causing it to scrape off. Hopefully, my family will stop insisting that the cat have a bell on her collar after realizing she's just going to keep losing it. Nothing against the cat, of course. Each time I cut that bell off of her collar, she just looks up at me curiously, possibly even thankfully, as if she too can't stand the sound of its jingling. Though I'm certain that the cat and I hate the sound of small jingling bells for two very different reasons. My wife, our 3 kids, and I recently moved to my old hometown. I was eager to leave this place as soon as I turned 18, and I couldn't explain to my wife why I didn't want to move back. The same reason why I can't explain to her why I hate the sound of jingling. I was just a kid. One summer here, when I was 12, my friends and I were hanging out on Main Street. "I want strawberry," the little kid exclaimed. They were probably 6 or 7, and they bounced excitedly up and down with a shining grin from one ear to the other, their hands raised up, one clenched around a handful of change. They were smiling adoringly up at the clown, who was dancing in front of an ice cream truck. Turning to the little boy with a smirk and a wink, the clown sang, "For $1, 1 strawberry. I've prepared it for you, especially." The clown was tall and slender. The makeup around his face was white with dark pink triangles around his mouth as well as his eyes. which were both wide and kind. He wore a large sky blue drape over a striped unitard with different shades of gold and purple with bright red accents. He wore a thick belt around his waist. At points around this belt, as well, from threads of the blue drape hung small brass and shiny bells, which rang a chorus of jingling with every movement, and sang a nameless tune whenever he danced. And how this clown loved to dance. "Mr. Jingles! Mr. Jingles!" another kid cried. "Can I have an ice cream sandwich?" The clown, Mr. Jingles, widened his eyes as he looked down at her. He took a deep breath as his smile grew and said, "You're the first today to say my name. This one is for free." He gave her a free ice cream sandwich and did another dance as his feet kicked out, revealing 2 more jingling bells, each one attached to the tip of each of his curled shoes. He did little magic tricks with his hands, and all the children around him laughed and cheered. Some even tried mimicking his dance around him. My friends and I sat on our bikes at a distance, watching the laughable spectacle. "I betcha he diddles kids," Richie said with a snort. "Nah," Brady retorted. "My mom says he's retarded. He probably doesn't even know what to do with his junk." We all laughed at that. I scoffed, saying, "Whatever his problem is, he's fucking creepy." "Ain't that the truth?" Levi said. "I can't be the only one who wants to do something about this guy." Each one of us turned to look at Levi. We didn't really have a leader, but if there was ever a title holder for lead troublemaker, it was Levi. We knew he had something brewing in his mind ever since he first saw Mr. Jingles, and I was eager to stick it to that clown. "What you thinkin'?" I asked, a mischievously wide smile growing on my face. "Simple," Levi said coldly. "We fuck with the clown until he leaves, and we make sure he stays gone." I had the simple job of distracting the clown. I thought this was the dumbest role placement in the history of pranks, seeing as I was never much of an actor. So when I walked up to Mr. Jingles, I just did what first came to my mind and started asking questions. "Hey, clown, what flavors you got?" Mr. Jingles whirled in my direction. The quickness of that sudden movement and my proximity to him, I realized I was much more scared of this clown than I had initially thought I ever could be. "Little kiddo," Mr. Jingles exclaimed. "I've got flavors to match the rainbow." He kicked a leg out in a small dance maneuver. "I've got sweets to make your hair grow." He laughed. "I've got strawberry and chocolate, and long as you've got your wallet, I've got vanilla and mint, with a flashy green tint. There's pistachio and Neapolitan, but try not to get it on your chin." He laughed and chuckled, and that innocent sound within it made me start to think that maybe he didn't deserve to get ran out of town. I couldn't explain it, but he soothed me. All the fear and enmity I felt towards the clown seemed so unjustified now. But it was too late. Richie and Brady started banging against the hood of the ice cream truck while making guttural monkey noises. Mr. Jingles turned, his wide smile melting away in a thin line of confusion. He walked over to my friends, saying, "Heyo, kiddos, how about and was cut off when the truck's engine started. The clown's head turned, and his mouth opened to a wide O of shock as he looked through the windshield. Levi was in the driver's seat and had turned on the truck. He started to run and shouted, "Oh no, kiddo, Mr. Jingles doesn't think," and was interrupted again when Richie pushed the clown over Brady, who was knelt behind him. The two ran away laughing. I was about to run too, and that's when I realized that Levi had more planned for what was meant to be a spread-out string of pranks on Mr. Jingles. As the clown gasped on the pavement, Levi revved the engine and then put the car in drive. He dove out of the side of the truck and sprinted down the block, faster than I'd ever seen him run before. I turned back, just in time to watch as Mr. Jingles's ice cream truck ran over his midsection. This caused the vehicle to swerve, forcing the rear tires to crush the clown's face. The body of the clown convulsed and spazzed. A monstrous ringing of disturbed jingling from the bells overlaid the tones of crushing bones, and a sound like that of a tossed watermelon. I was motionless and numb in indescribable horror as the vehicle rolled softly away, and I looked at the smeared remains of what used to be a human face. Blood gushed spastically out of a gaping maw that was once the mouth of Mr. Jingles, and more of it oozed out of his ears and coagulated in the ruffled tangles of his dyed pink hair. I stepped back, slowly at first, then turned and ran in the same direction as my friends. We were never named for that crime, though I knew my dad had his suspicions that we had something to do with it. It wouldn't be for a few years later that I wished we had come clean. After all, it was just supposed to be a prank. I don't think Richie and Brady thought Levi would do something like that, and I certainly didn't. I think I was just scared of what Levi would do if he ever found out I ratted him out. So I stayed silent. Now that I'm back here, all these years later, I stood outside our house in the dead of night with my cat and her recently defaced collar at my feet. And I wondered if the mysterious death of Mr. Jingles is still talked about, and if anyone ever thought of any leads. I wondered why it was so difficult to get in touch with Richie or Brady or their families. Maybe I would try to get in touch with Levi, but part of me doesn't want to see the man he grew up to be. A thick fog was creeping down the street. I watched as it grew, frothing up my driveway. I began to wonder if the reason why I couldn't get a hold of my friends was more simple and yet more outlandish than anything more feasible than moving away. The fog had reached my feet, and the cat meowed frightfully, and with a hiss ran somewhere behind the house. But here I stood, watching the wall of unnaturally decisive fog move towards and envelop me. I stood here, waiting for what I knew I had been due for some time. I know it wouldn't matter if I tried to run from it or not, because I'm here in this town, and the consequences of my part in a joke gone wrong are here to greet me. Through the thick fog, I can hear the distorted sound of an ice cream truck's song approaching, and through the fainted beat can be made out the cacophonous ringing, as if some pair of jingling bells attached to two slippered feet. Jingle, jingle, a belly full of apples. Well, explain to me what it was doing on the tree if I wasn't meant to eat it. I had a long, hard day, Adam. If you remember correctly, you were supposed to name all the animals with tails, while I handled the green ones. The next thing I know, you're passed out by the water circle, taking yet another one of your naps. That left me to come up with all those names, and by the time I was done, I was famished. The apple tree is the closest to the water hole, and that's why I picked an apple. It was convenient. I wasn't deliberately trying to disobey the Lord. After an exhausting day, I simply wanted whichever fruit I could get to first. Can you explain to me why God put the forbidden fruit so close to us and made it so red to draw our attention to it, and made it so tasty? Adam, if you could try an apple, you would never be the same. I cannot describe its delectability. You may as well try one now. We've already been cast out. It's not as though he's going to cast us out again. If you ask me, it's unbelievably rude of him to have us name every living creature on earth, put all the acceptable fruit out of reach, and then kick us out of the garden once all the tedious tasks are completed. He didn't even say thank you, not even a card expressing his thanks. I realize cards haven't been invented yet, but if he can create an entire universe in a few days, I think he can figure out a way to show gratitude. Don't you? Oh, stop crying, Adam. This place isn't so bad. Sure, it isn't paradise, but there are some plants with needles sticking out of them, and some lovely dust, and a lot of very interesting rocks. That one looks sharp. Be sure to never pick it up and drop it on anybody's head. Please cover yourself up. I don't know why, but for some reason, I can't stand the sight of you in all your nakedness. Shame. What's that? No, you know I don't listen when he talks. It's so loud and condescending. Do this Do that. Name this. Worship me. Stop rolling your eyes at me, Eve, or I'll turn you back into a rib. It's all so boring. If any of it were all that vital to know, he'd write it down on a piece of stone. I suggested that to him once, and he pretended it was a bad recommendation. But secretly, I think he filed it away to use at a later date. The first time I see a rock with a rule on it, I'm going to look up at the sky and say, "Wow, who gave you that idea?" See if I don't. I'm not afraid of him, you know. You might be, but I'm not. I've barely had time to contemplate my own existence, so the threat of having my existence nullified is of no concern to me. Clearly, he doesn't want to get rid of us and start from scratch, or he would have done it already. No, he wants to teach us a lesson. He wants us to wander aimlessly for the remainder of our lives, cloaked in this thing called shame. I shall not. I refuse. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and I will not pretend that I do. A man makes a silly rule, and if the rule is broken, that does not make it any less silly. I don't care what sort of man it is. I don't care if you say God is not simply a man. He sounds like a man. And because he can sound any way he likes, that means he wants to sound like a man. We call him he, don't we? Then he is a man with made-up rules for living that I was never going to obey. I don't care if he hears me. Let him hear me. I am meant to spend the rest of my days surrounded by needle plants, and you, a man with one rib. I am meant to wear rags, because not wearing them makes me feel strange. I am meant to have children, I suppose, based on how disagreeable I am and how stupid you are. I can't imagine they'll be very endearing children. Once those children are here, I have no idea who they'll have children with, because it'll just be us. I guess that means once we die, and our children die, that'll be the end of this nonsensical little experiment. Oh, but at least we named the giraffes first. A question for you, Adam. Since he isn't responding to us, why are we the only ones who can't eat the apples? I specifically saw a loud bird eating an apple the other day. Why weren't all the loud birds cast out of the garden? If a giraffe eats an apple, will it be thrown out of the garden? Why were we the only ones prohibited? Right, the knowledge. We're not meant to know anything. We're just meant to assign names, be fruitful, multiply, and praise him every chance we get. If we want knowledge, then it's out we go. Well, Adam, I choose to know. I choose to know things. Not just some things, but everything. Why create an entire world and then tell me I'm not allowed to know anything about it? I can't help but feel this was all some kind of test. and I will not be tested. Had I known that he was testing me, I would have eaten every apple on that tree. I would have stared up at him with the seeds falling out of my mouth, and I would have laughed. For if I am to go into exile, I am not going with an empty stomach. I will go with a belly full of apples. My only regret is that I stopped at one. I will not feel badly about you being punished for something I did either, because I have been punished many times over for you, for your laziness, for your superiority complex, for the way you smell at night when you are pressed up against me. It reeks so that I can barely sleep. Yet I have said nothing, because I have accepted that we are joined forever. You make strange noises in your sleep, but he never punished you for that. I took one bite, and we are damned. Be angry if you like, Adam, but do not expect me to worry myself over your anger. Your anger is your business. I will not make it mine. Last night, before he woke us with our punishment, I had a dream. I had a dream that all of this was submerged in water. Enough water to cover even the tops of the tallest trees. There were more people, lots more. They were running and screaming. Some were already drowned. In the distance, I could see a large boat, but it was too far away. I would never reach it in time. I would die alongside all these strangers. Instead, I lay myself down. I began to float, right up to the surface. I could still hear the wailing and the pleading all around me, but I was not making a sound. I simply laid like that on the surface of the water and let it take me wherever it wanted to go. Dance of the damned. The dimly lit bar exuded an aura of faded elegance. The soft glow of neon lights casting a surreal ambiance over the audience, who sat in hushed anticipation. As the spotlight flickered to life, illuminating the makeshift stage at one end of the room, the murmurs of conversation died down, replaced by an air of eager expectation. As the curtains slowly parted, revealing the expanse of the stage, a solitary figure stood poised at its center, the ballerina, with a grace that seemed to transcend the earthly realm. The ballerina came to life as the first notes of the music filled the air. Her movements were a symphony of fluidity and precision, each step a testament to years of tireless dedication and unwavering discipline. Like a delicate flower swaying in the breeze, she floated across the stage, her every motion a masterpiece. Her arms moved languidly, weaving a tale of love and longing with each sweep and arc. She beckoned the audience into her world with each movement, inviting them to share her emotions. Poised and elegant, the ballerina commanded the stage with a commanding and serene presence. Her posture was flawless, her form a study in perfect alignment. She seemed to defy gravity, soaring effortlessly through the air with divine grace. Her footwork was a marvel to behold, each step executed with exquisite precision and grace. From the delicate steps to the lightning-fast turns, her movements were a testament to the strength and agility of the human body. The audience watched in awe as she leaped and twirled across the stage, her every movement a testament to the power of the human spirit. But beyond the technical prowess, the ballerina's ability to convey emotion captivated the audience. With each extension of her leg and each arch of her back, she imbued her performance with a depth of feeling that resonated with all who watched. From the depths of despair to the heights of ecstasy, her dance spoke to the universal human experience, transcending language and culture. The ballerina executed a series of mesmerizing turns that left the audience breathless. Spinning gracefully across the stage, she seemed to defy the laws of physics, her movements a blur of motion and light. But as the music swelled to its crescendo and the time for her final bow arrived, a sudden sense of unease settled over the bar. With a flourish, the ballerina prepared to take her bow, her movements graceful and poised. But then disaster struck in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Inexplicably, she stumbled, her perfect balance faltering as she fell to the ground in a heap. Gasps of shock echoed through the bar as the audience watched in horror. But it was what happened next that genuinely chilled them to the bone. As the ballerina lay on the stage, everything around her seemed to shift and blur, as if reality was unraveling. The once vibrant colors of the stage faded to a dull, lifeless gray, and a sickening sense of dread hung heavy in the air. And then, from her wrists and ankles, blood began to flow, staining the stage crimson red. It pooled around her, a macabre tableau of horror and despair. With a sudden jerk, the ballerina rose to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural. It was as if she were a marionette manipulated by unseen hands, her body moving in grotesque contortions that defied all logic and reason. The audience watched in stunned silence as the once graceful ballerina twisted and convulsed, her limbs bending at impossible angles. And then, with a horrifying realization, they understood what was happening. She was no longer in control of her own body. With each agonizing movement, it became clear that she was under control by some evil force, a dark presence that lurked unseen in the shadows. As she danced her final, nightmarish dance, the audience could only watch her twisted performance in helpless horror. They knew they were witnessing something more sinister than a dance. They saw the manifestation of pure, unadulterated evil, a force beyond comprehension that had seized control of the ballerina's soul. As the ballerina rose from the stage floor, her once graceful movements became grotesque spasms of pain and fear. With each jerky motion, her bones fractured and splintered, and the sickening sound of snapping echoed through the bar like a macabre symphony. Her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, each movement a torment of agony that etched lines of suffering onto her pale, sweat-drenched face. Her eyes, wide with terror, pleaded for release. Still, her mouth was closed by wire that had inexplicably wrapped around her lips, sealing them shut with cruel finality. Blood dripped from the small holes punctured by the wire, staining her pristine costume with crimson droplets. With each convulsion, her skin ripped, revealing raw, red flesh beneath. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the sickening stench of decay, a suffocating fog that enveloped the stage in a shroud of horror. The audience watched in horrified fascination as the ballerina's body contorted and twisted, her movements growing more frantic and erratic with each passing moment. It was as if she looked torn apart from the inside out, her very essence consumed by the dark forces that held her in their grasp. The once pristine costume began to tear and shred with each jerky movement. Fabric rents apart like paper, exposing swaths of pale, sweat-sickened skin beneath. The delicate tutu, once a symbol of elegance and grace, now hung in tatters around her hips, the shredded remnants barely clinging to her broken form. With each agonizing twist and contortion, more of her flesh lay bare to the horrified audience. The delicate lace and satin that had once adorned her body now lay in tatters on the stage floor, a grotesque parody of the beauty that had once been. And as the last shreds of fabric fell away, the ballerina stood naked and exposed before the stunned onlookers. Her body, once a vision of perfection, was now marred by bruises and welts, the result of the unspeakable torture she had endured. The audience, pinned to their chairs by a mixture of terror and morbid fascination, could only watch in horror as the ballerina's broken form was laid bare before them. There was nowhere to look and hide from the gruesome spectacle unfolding on stage. Everyone was dressed like ballerinas and knew they would dance on that stage. They wanted to run, but couldn't move, as an invisible force controlled them. As the ballerina's tortured dance finally came to an end, the audience was left to grapple with the horrifying images that had seared into their minds, a grim testament to the depths of depravity that lurked within the shadows of the human soul. And then, with a final, gut-wrenching spasm, she collapsed to the ground in a heap of broken bones and shredded flesh. Her once beautiful form stood reduced to nothing more than a grotesque pile of meat and bone. A haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked beneath the surface of reality. A palpable tension hung in the air, suffocating the bar in an oppressive silence. The audience, gripped by horror and fascination, could not tear their eyes away from the grotesque spectacle unfolding before them. Everything disappeared into darkness, leaving only screams. The darkness seemed to last forever. Suddenly, as the final notes of the haunting melody faded into the darkness, the stage erupted into blinding light, illuminating a scene of unspeakable horror. Standing at the center of the stage was another woman, clad in a tattered ballerina costume. Yet, any semblance of grace or beauty was shattered by the sight of the twisted iron-spiked wire that bound her limbs, cutting into her flesh with every movement. Where her eyes should have been, there were only bloody craters oozing with the sickening evidence of unspeakable violence. Her mouth, too, was sealed shut with glue, denying her even the semblance of a voice to cry out in pain. With a start, the woman began to dance, her movements jerky and erratic as she struggled against the cruel restraints that bound her. Blood spilled onto the stage with each tortured step, staining the pristine floorboards with a sickening crimson hue. As the grotesque spectacle unfolded on stage, 10 figures sat in silence, their faces hidden behind intricate designs of porcelain and feathers, giving them an air of anonymity and intrigue. Dressed uniformly in black suits and dresses, the men and women held glasses filled with a dark crimson liquid, which remained a mystery to those around them. With each sickening snap of bone, they raised their glasses in a silent toast, the red liquid sloshing gently within. Their reactions were chillingly composed, their expressions hidden behind the masks as they watched the ballerina's torment unfold with a sense of detached amusement. To them, the grotesque display was not a source of horror, but a form of entertainment, a dreadful performance to be savored and enjoyed. And so, as the final horrific act played out on stage, and the ballerina's lifeless form lay crumpled on the ground, the figures rose from their seats in unison, their masks giving nothing away as they started to laugh. The Manuscript of Kashi. There are places where the veil between the known and the unfathomable is perilously thin, and it is in such realms that truths are best left forgotten. Ancient Kashi, now Varanasi, conceals more than history in its name. With dusk settling, the city wraps itself in a twilight shroud. Smoke threads twist through the air, blending with murmured prayers, thickening the atmosphere with an almost tangible sense of mystery. The Ganges River reflects the glimmering lights of ceremonial fires along the Ghats, where the sacred and the profane dance in the curling mists. The pyres, fed by ancient woods, consume the bodies with a reverence that belies the violence of flames. The air is thick with sandalwood and charred offerings, masking the finality of death under sacred rites. In the shallows of the Ganges, silhouetted figures wade with deliberate steps. These men, draped in the sparse cloth of the destitute, are seekers of the dead's forgotten wealth. Their hands, darkened by river silt and ash, sift through the submerged sands, feeling for the cold bite of metal. Gold rings, necklaces, and the occasional coin dropped from the deceased's pockets, each piece plucked from the holy river's grip, is a macabre token of survival, destined to be cleansed, melted down, and sold to adorn the living. Stepping off a narrow boat onto the stone steps, James Montgomery, a British archaeologist, felt as though he had entered a painting, a scene preserved across the ages. Even with his academic accolades, James clung to his skepticism like a knight to his armor, guarding against the intangible. He believed only in what could be touched, measured, seen. Yet Varanasi seemed determined to erode his certainties. His constant companion, a weathered copy of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, betrayed a fascination with the afterlife, a scholarly interest, he insisted, nothing more. His trained eyes sketched and noted details as he walked through the bustling streets. It was early spring of 1932, and the British Raj held sway over India. Political tensions were palpable, with the struggle for independence intensifying across many regions like a storm gathering on the horizon. He had spent years poring over texts and artifacts in the dusty confines of the British Museum. This opportunity for fieldwork was a rare departure from his usual scholarly pursuits, and he was determined to make the most of it, fluent in Sanskrit and well-versed in Hindu and Sikh philosophy and religion. He was chosen for an excavation project at the revered Kashi Vishwanath Temple, one of the 12 Jyotirlingas, the holiest Shiva temples. The task was to study and document newly unearthed relics that had recently been discovered beneath the temple grounds. James had heard rumors of an ancient sanctuary that once stood where the Kashi Vishwanath temple now dominated. Scholars had long debated its origins, speculating that it might have been dedicated to Vishnu and built during a time when the city was a flourishing center of Vaishnavite worship. This prospect excited him not only for its historical significance, but also for the professional acclaim that such a discovery would bring. James adjusted his satchel and stepped toward the temple, his eyes scanning the intricate carvings with a critical eye. Agoras, an ascetic sect known for extreme Hinduism, roamed the temple grounds. Ignoring the incense and chants, he focused on the worn stone steps, tracing the passage of countless feet over centuries. His fingers brushed against the ancient stone, lingering longer than necessary. His distrust, a fortress against the unknown, was built brick by brick from his strictly rational upbringing. His father, a staunch scientist, had always dismissed anything that couldn't be quantified or measured. Yet, the allure of the mystical and the unexplainable had always gnawed at the edges of James's curiosity. Weeks passed as James meticulously cataloged statues, pottery fragments, and other relics brought up by the excavation team. He spent his days under the relentless sun and his evenings in quiet reflection, poring over his notes and comparing them with historical texts. The heat, the dust, and the ceaseless hum of the city created a backdrop of sensory overload, grounding him in the present even as he delved into the past. The distant sounds of political rallies and protests occasionally broke the monotony, reminding him of the larger currents of change sweeping the nation. One afternoon, Pandit Sharma, the temple's priest and scholar, approached James with a bundle wrapped in cloth. Earlier, workers had found it deep within the temple's sanctum, and now, silhouetted against the glaring sun, he carried it with a solemn grace. "What have you there, Pandit Sharma?" James asked, dusting his hands off as he stood. The Pandit paused. "This manuscript was among the items uncovered today, Sahib. The workers thought it prudent to bring it directly to me." James raised an eyebrow. "May I?" he asked, reaching out. Pandit Sharma hesitated for a moment before handing it over. "Of course, Mr. Montgomery." It was a weathered leather manuscript. The cover was adorned with unusual mandalas and arcane symbols. Intrigued, James carefully opened the manuscript. His eyes widened slightly. These symbols, they could date back to the time of the Gupta Empire, or even earlier. "Is that possible?" "Very likely, Sahib," the Pandit replied, his voice measured. "That part of the temple has not been disturbed in centuries." James traced a finger over the inscriptions. These inscriptions, they're unlike anything we've found so far. Quite remarkable how much light this could shed on our understanding of the past. Pandit Sharma nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, it sheds light on forgotten chapters, but even a small light can cast long shadows." James paused, considering the Pandit's words, then smiled slightly. "I am not merely here to unearth the past, Pandit Sharma. I aim to awaken it." Pandit Sharma met his gaze, a hint of understanding in his eyes. "Be mindful, Sahib. Awakened pasts can have lives of their own." James's smile grew. Precisely, panted. He then glanced up, a touch of condescension in his voice. You're done here. Thanks. With a slight nod, Pandit Sharma turned and walked away, leaving James alone with the manuscript. As James deciphered the text, his breath caught. The manuscript chronicled his life with chilling precision, like a mirror reflecting his deepest secrets. Determined to uncover the manuscript's origins, James carefully closed the ancient pages and clutched it to his chest. He approached one of the workers from the excavation team, asking about the manuscript's origins. They confirmed it had been unearthed from a chamber beneath the temple, near an older sanctuary, possibly dedicated to Vishnu, the preserver of time and destiny. James couldn't believe his luck. This find suggested a time when Vaishnavism thrived in Varanasi, possibly before Shaivism took prominence. Archaeologists had searched for this temple for decades, and here it was, right under his feet. His professional hubris soared. He would be the one to unveil its mysteries. The excavation sparked heated debates among local authorities and religious figures. Many saw it as exploitative and desecrating sacred sites. Workers labored under brutal conditions, some collapsing from exhaustion, a few already dead. Precious relics were bound for Britain, trophies of conquest rather than cultural treasures. James saw how the British Raj thrived on deepening religious divides to maintain control. That night, he took the manuscript with him, its weight heavy in his bag. Stepping out of the temple, a sensation of being watched washed over him. He glanced around, but saw only the sleepy sun and the twinkle of distant torches. As James moved towards the exit, a nearly naked figure, covered in ashes, stepped into his path. The Agori's unblinking eyes bored into his, like twin voids absorbing all light. Without a word, he briefly extended his hand, touching James's chest before drawing back. The past is not a place you can escape, he murmured, his voice a low rasp. He then stepped aside, allowing James to continue. Other Agoris stood like statues in the shade, their eyes fixed on him. He could feel their silent stares following him as he made his way home under the weak light of a lone bulb. James hunched over the ancient manuscript spread across the makeshift desk in his rented room near the Ghats. Night had fallen over Varanasi, a cloak of silence occasionally pierced by the distant clamor of street vendors closing shop. His eyes traced the faded Sanskrit inscribed on parchment. The air around him felt unnaturally still, as if the darkness outside was staring at him. As he read further, the words exposed his deepest fears of inadequacy and the recent failure of his marriage. It described the sudden illness and death of his childhood friend, an event that had haunted him for years. It recounted the tragic accident that claimed his sister, down to the exact date and circumstances. The text also revealed his deepest aspirations to return to Britain as a celebrated scholar, juxtaposed with a chilling prediction that he would never leave India. The manuscript spoke of a future where his work would remain unfinished, his dreams unfulfilled. It knew his private regrets, the letters he wrote but never sent, and his secret fears of dying alone in a foreign land. One evening, a passage caught his eye, a prophecy marking a specific date, ominously close. It predicted a fire that would engulf the Manikarnika Ghat, where the bodies of the dead are cremated in ceaseless pyres. It detailed an ominous ritual involving a sacrifice, ashes, and flames. The description was hauntingly visceral. A growing sense of paranoia marked the days that followed. James noticed figures draped in white ashes, with stark red markings across their foreheads, appearing frequently in his windows and following him around town. They spoke no words, but watched him with an intensity that left his skin crawling. One morning, he found a small clay statue of Shiva outside his door, its eyes painted a vivid red that seemed to follow him into his dreams. The Aghoris seemed less like mere devotees and more like heralds of impending doom. They left offerings that were both a blessing and a warning. Fragrant bundles of herbs used in ancient death rituals, cryptic notes penned in an almost forgotten script, hinting at the inevitable turn of the cosmic wheel. As the festival of Mahashivaratri, the great night of Shiva, approached, bringing crowds of pilgrims to the city, James decided it was time to leave India immediately. He hastily packed his belongings and made plans to buy a ticket for the next ship back to Britain. He rushed back to the temple to gather his materials and return the manuscript, hoping to distance himself from the dark predictions. He walked through crowds of devotees lost in their reverent prayers. Behind him, the procession of silent Aghoris maintained their vigil. Beyond mere observers, they seemed to usher him toward a destiny he had yet to comprehend. Pushing open the chamber's heavy stone door, the manuscript in his bag felt like a living heart beating in sync with his own. A heart that felt, with dreadful certainty, the true nature of the cycle it was bound to. He sensed the followers just beyond the doorway, their silent presence pressing in on him. The musty smell of the ancient parchment mingled with the faint scent of incense. He gently put down the manuscript, but the intricate symbols and diagrams evoked an overwhelming familiarity. The memory of his mentor, Dr. Robert Astor, came unbidden. Astor's voice, rich with reverence, speaking of the Akashic records, that boundless archive of all that ever was and will be. Dr. Astor had described it as an energetic log of all existence, recorded in a non-physical plane known as the ether. James had always dismissed these notions as esoteric ramblings. But now, in the manuscript's presence, he felt a dawning realization that perhaps his mentor had been right all along. James had always viewed the teachings of the Upanishads as academic. Yet the manuscript's unsettling synchronicities brought them to life, defying his scholarly detachment. He had searched for logical explanations, but each attempt only deepened his unease. The weight of inevitability grew, pressing down on him like an unseen force. It was as if the manuscript tapped into something profound and ancient, recording the fate of humanity with chilling precision. It felt as if the manuscript was a conduit to the Akashic records themselves, linking him to an endless archive of existence. Brahman, the ultimate reality, no longer seemed a distant metaphysical idea, but a palpable truth closing in on him. He felt an inexplicable compulsion to venture deeper into the sanctum. The air grew denser, charged with an energy that made the hairs on his neck stand. Intricate mandalas adorned the walls, their interlocking patterns subtly swirling, almost alive, drawing him further in. The sense of an unseen force grew more intense, a nearly tangible presence pressing in from all sides. Then, at the heart of the sanctum, James encountered the Timeless One. The entity had no definitive form, appearing as a floating mandala, a geometric figure of shifting forms and glowing light that seemed to be everywhere all at once. An irresistible pull gripped him, his feet moving of their own accord, drawing him into the heart of the mandala. Stepping into it, James found himself in the vast library of the Akashic records, where every event, thought, and possibility was cataloged in endless corridors of knowledge. Shelves stretched beyond sight, each filled with tomes of every life that had ever been and ever would be. He walked through the library, his fingers brushing against ancient scrolls. Each revealed a different path he could have taken, yet all led back to the mandala's center. Every choice, every action had led him here. James encountered visions of his life as he drifted through the Akashic records. Moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and failure. He saw himself as a child, staring wide-eyed at the night sky, dreaming of its mysteries. He saw his younger self, full of ambition and determination, seeking to unravel the secrets of the past. And he saw his present self, standing at the threshold of cosmic enlightenment, poised to transcend the limits of human understanding. The realization struck him with profound clarity. The illusion of Maya unraveled before his eyes. James's lingering self, a fragile residue of his identity, resisted the truth. He saw himself standing at the edge of the void, the vast expanse of the Akashic records stretching before him. With a final, desperate act of surrender, he let go, allowing himself to fall into the mandala's center. The geometric patterns converged into a blinding point of light. And in that light, the true nature of the universe was revealed to James. The boundaries of his being faded away, replaced by the infinite expanse of the cosmic order. Enlightenment and terror walked hand in hand through his psyche as he became one with the eternal truths that had tormented him, stepping out of the shining temple, naked and transformed. Agoras waited outside, eyes filled with reverence. Their chants, a deep hum of Om Namah Shivaya, rose and fell like the tide. They approached, hands gentle but firm, painting his body with ashes in a sacred and surreal ritual. The manuscript's revelations had stripped him of his former self, exposing him to the timeless one. Shadows blinked under the torchlight, twisting into hideous forms. The Agoras' chants swelled, their voices merging into an ominous crescendo. The night pulsed with otherworldly energy. The streets, the river, the city itself seemed to writhe with their own life. The Agoras approached, their hands moving with ritualistic precision, smearing his skin with ashes. The chants grew louder, each note a harbinger of the horrors hidden within that ancient manuscript. The smell of burnt offerings clinging to the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the river. With eyes dark and impenetrable, the Agoras lifted him onto a makeshift bier. Their chants rose as they carried him through the narrow streets, the fire casting long shadows on ancient walls. The city watched in silence, as if holding its breath. The procession reached the Ghats, where pyres crackled with an insatiable hunger. They laid him on the pyre, the wood rough against his skin. The flames licked at his skin like a searing pan. The Agoras surrounded him, their chants reaching a fevered pitch. He raised his arms and covered his eyes. The words of Krishna to Arjuna rose from the depths of his memory, carried by a voice that felt both his own and not. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One, he intoned, the words slicing through the night. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. The Agoras bowed, their chants rising to an otherworldly intensity, a tangible force pressing in from all sides. The inferno flared higher, casting grotesque silhouettes that danced and twisted in macabre patterns. As the pyre ignited, some Agoras stepped into the fire, their chants unwavering. One by one, Their bodies were consumed in a final, fiery ritual. Others shared his roasted flesh in an act of utmost devotion. The night filled with the scent of burning flesh and sandalwood. The flames consumed him, the chants fading into a distant hum. The ghats of Varanasi glowed with an ethereal light, the river reflecting the divine dance. The night embraced him, the pyre's ashes mingling with the sacred waters, a tight-lipped witness to the eternal cycle